we'll get started here.
Excellent. We're going to get started then. I'd like to welcome everyone here this afternoon. Appreciate you taking the time to come out to hear some good news that Saratoga County has to offer this afternoon. My name is Theodore Kusnierz. I'm chairman of the Board of Supervisors. Also with me this afternoon, I'm pleased to introduce Supervisor Gaston, who is the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. We also have Supervisor Phil Barrett, who is chair of Economic Development. On my left, we have Dr. Daniel Cools, who's the Commissioner of Public Health. And on his left, we have Sheriff Michael Zerlo. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Over here on my far right, we have Kevin Dugan, who is Director of Governmental Affairs for the New York State Restaurant Association, and we'll be hearing from him shortly. Just a quick update on the numbers for COVID here in Saratoga County. Total number of cases to date is presently 11,415. The number of deaths that have occurred from county residents is 141. The number of recovered cases is 9,176. And presently we have 29 individuals that are hospitalized. And that's a huge reduction from the last time we were together here at a press conference on January 29th, where at that time the number of individuals was 70. So definitely good news there. More good news, the 7-day average positivity rate here in Saratoga County has dropped to 2.2%. That's a 63% reduction from January 29th. Fantastic news. And more good news, the number of residents in Saratoga County that have received at least one dose of the vaccine is now 32,040, which is almost 14% of our county residents. Following up with that, the number of individuals that have received a second dose of the vaccine is 16,132, and that represents about 7,000 of the county's residents. So definitely going in the right direction. All good news. I can tell you that the number of individuals that have been vaccinated percentage-wise statewide is 10.4%. And we're well above the state average at approximately 14%. Saratoga County remains at the ready to move forward with a mass vaccination event through the use of the Saratoga Springs City Center. If we get the call from the state, and those conversations remain ongoing. As a matter of fact, county officials were on a call with the governor yesterday where he indicated he favors large mass vaccination sites versus smaller ones, and it's clear that the state is preparing for expected large quantities of the vaccines that may be available this spring. Also good news for us, the governor has indicated that he is very open to partnering with the counties to run these mass vaccination sites. To that end, county officials have already met with a representative of the governor's office and conducted a tour of the City of Saratoga Springs City Center, and that went very well, and that shows that the governor is keeping that possible location in the location statewide for such a mass vaccination event. The state is specifically looking to secure sites that can do 3,000 plus vaccinations per day with the ability to do that 24/7. And the city center lends itself for that. Another requirement that the state has for such sites is that they demonstrate that the entity be fair in the distribution process. For example, not favoring one group over another. And I can tell you that Saratoga County Public Health proves that every single day and at each and every one of the pods that they're involved in. And as a result, the governor's comments makes the Saratoga City Center an ideal location for a mass vaccination site. The challenges that remain is that there's not enough vaccine out there to meet the needs of nationally, statewide, and here in Saratoga County. But the good news is the governor has indicated that the federal allotment that has been provided to the state of New York has been increased by over 20% over the past 3 weeks. And we're hopeful that that will trickle down and mean that we can get more vaccines in the shot in the arms of our residents. So with that, I'd just like to briefly turn it over to Dr. Cools to provide an update from his department. Dr. Cools.
Thank you, Supervisor. As Supervisor Kusnierz mentioned, the data is very encouraging, and both infection and hospitalization rates continue to decline. It's very encouraging data, but we must not let our guard down and continue to take everyday preventive measures to protect our communities, our healthcare workers, and our hospitals. Some additional data from what the Supervisor mentioned. We're averaging now about 44 cases a day in the last week. At our peak on January 6th, it was 276 cases in a single day. And so it's a dramatic decrease. We are working cooperatively with the Capital Region Vaccination Hub and physicians all throughout Saratoga County to start the process when supply increases in the coming weeks to distribute vaccine to physicians, in addition to holding our mass vaccination clinics and our pods, so that we're giving more and more avenues for people in the county to access vaccine. Right now, although vaccine eligibility statewide has increased, our county health department is restricted by the state for who we are allowed to administer vaccines to. Those groups include first responders, educators, grocery and convenience store workers, and individuals with comorbidities of any age. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Also today, I'm very pleased to announce that Saratoga County has established a vaccine interest list website. And I'd like to thank Supervisor Gaston and Eileen Bennett with our IT department, as well as the Public Health Department, for all working collaboratively to develop that capability. The purpose of the site is to collect information for any resident that is interested in receiving a vaccine, and to provide information that allows that person to determine if they're currently eligible for a vaccine. All information will remain confidential and will only be accessible by key public health and IT staff, and it's on an as-needed basis and to help support our vaccination efforts. It's important to note that providing such information through the website does not reserve or guarantee any individual a vaccination here in Saratoga County. However, the information will be also used to link residents with vaccination opportunities that may be available elsewhere. And I'd just like to point out that when this site becomes available, which I believe will be shortly after this press conference, there's no reason to be the first one to sign up. It's just a list that we can provide to individuals. It does not guarantee a vaccination. And so with that, I'd like to ask Supervisor Gaston to just share a little more detail on how we got to establishing that list, or ability for that list. Supervisor?
Thank you, Chairman. As the Chairman indicated when he was elected on January 6th, the entire county, all of our departments are dedicated to responding and recovering from COVID-19. To that end, I reached out to Public Health and to IT regarding how we could build any sort of registration list or interest list for vaccines. It was very important to Public Health that whatever we developed did not give the appearance of guaranteeing a vaccine. Vaccine doses at this time are particularly limited. In addition to that, eligibility for vaccination by the county is very limited. Our IT department looked, along with Public Health, through a number of commercial options, and as we all know from how good our staff is, our staff was actually best placed to develop and launch an interest list for everyone. This will allow any interested Saratoga County resident to sign up, indicate that they are interested in obtaining a vaccine, and the reasons that they are currently eligible. It's important to note that just because you sign up, that does not mean you are currently eligible to be vaccinated by the county. Anyone who is interested can sign up on this list. It will, however, allow public health to reach, sort, and determine what individuals there may be vaccination available for at any given time. As the chairman indicated, this is not a first come, first serve. Equity and equality are also an important part of our public health vaccination program, and so we will make sure that everyone who is there who is equally eligible has equal access. This link will be out on our website. It will be on the front page at saratogacountyn.gov. So there will be no need to search for it for a while. And we've also had some individuals reviewing it to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. We will be launching a telephone support line. However, that takes a little bit more time technology-wise, and we wanted to make sure that it was out there as soon as possible. In the meantime, everyone is able to go through on the website and get it as soon as that link is out. In addition, if you don't have access to technology, please reach out to your local senior center or to your town supervisor, and they can assist you in accessing it as well. It'll ask some basic information, your name, your address, and why you're eligible, including whether you have a comorbidity, your age, occupation, all of the categories that exist right now. And as those expand, we can also edit that list to include those as well. All of that information is only accessible to public health and the IT staff necessary in order to utilize that for public health. It will not be shared to other entities or anywhere else. We would advise everyone to sign up. The worst that happens is you sign up, you obtain a vaccine elsewhere, and when you get a call, you tell us that you've already been vaccinated, and we move happily quite along. That's not bad news for us at all, but we do want to make sure that everyone has access and that we can affirmatively reach out as we can. I do want to thank especially our Director of IT, Eileen Bennett, who is not here because she is maintaining and ready to publish that list, Commissioner Cools, as well Director Cross from our Office of the Aging, who was very helpful in making sure that this would be accessible to those who are at highest risk in our community and also have the lowest access to technology. Again, our entire county staff worked very hard on this, and we're very happy to be able to put this out and help relieve some of the fears and anxiety for a lot of members of our community. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. That's something we as supervisors have, our phones have been ringing off the hook to ask if there is some list that our residents can get on. So that's going to go a long way to assisting our residents and supervisors across the county so that we do have a list that's ready to go at a moment's notice should availability happen overnight. The third point of today's press conference that I'd like to make, it's very exciting news. It's something that we discussed at at the first meeting for 2021. As we indicated, we would make COVID our #1 priority for 2021. And one of the components in making COVID a priority is not only the health aspect, but the impact that it has on our businesses. And probably there's many businesses that are struggling, but one segment in particular are individuals who operate our restaurants and food services to go. And at that first meeting, the Board of Supervisors committed to doing all we can to assist those types of businesses. And so today, I'm pleased to announce that there will be a resolution on the next Board of Supervisor meeting next week. That will be local law #1 for 2021 that will limit the food delivery fees during a declared emergency here in Saratoga County. The two criteria for an emergency in the county would be one that is either declared by the governor or the chair of the Board of Supervisors. And both of those have occurred since with the onset of COVID. The local law will prohibit third-party food delivery services from charging a food service establishment a delivery fee of more than 15% of the purchase price of each online order. In addition, such services will be prohibited from charging any food service establishment any other fees which equate to greater than 5% of the purchase price of the online order. These provisions, the way the local law is written, if adopted, will continue to be in place for 90 days after cessation of the declaration of the emergency. So with that, I'd like to ask Supervisor Phil Barrett, who's Chairman of Economic Development, to provide a little background on why this resolution is important to us as supervisors and the county as a whole in serving our residents. So Supervisor Barrett.
Thank you, Chairman. So as the Chairman explained, we've been working on this legislation. I want to thank the county attorney staff and other folks that have put this together and enable us to bring it forward. You know, the restaurant industry is very unique. No matter the size of your municipality, you have restaurants there. These are our neighbors, entrepreneurs. They're working incredibly hard to be successful under normal circumstances. Owning a restaurant is a very difficult industry to be successful in under regular circumstances. Personally, I would prefer that the market set rates and the cost of goods and services, again, under normal circumstances. For the last year, obviously, circumstances have been anything but normal. And unfortunately, businesses like restaurants have been forced to operate under very difficult conditions. Capacity limits, closings, curfews. These are all terrible situations for their business that are not of their own making. So as we go forward, what can we do to help businesses? And we, in Saratoga County and individual municipalities through IDAs, have done a tremendous amount to help small businesses, including restaurants, and we'll have more information and updates on that next week. But this is just one way that we can help some of these restaurants remain viable, remain successful, until we get to the point where the economy is once again open and operating under normal circumstances, until they can get back to having the normal operating hours and conditions that they're accustomed to. So the idea, as the chairman mentioned, is to limit the third-party delivery fees, and there's typically two sets of fees. There's the one fee for the delivery service, and then there's a listing fee. And working with the New York State Restaurant Association and many restaurants throughout Saratoga County that have contacted myself and other supervisors, we listened. We listened to what they had to say, what was important, what has worked, what hasn't worked. We learned from their experience over the last several months, and we believe we now have legislation that will be effective and one that they can support unanimously. So there will be a cap, 15% on the delivery fee, 5% on the listing fee. The new standards will be in effect during the declared emergency and 90 days after the emergency ceases. And compensation rates paid to a delivery person cannot be reduced. So those are the three main factors of the legislation that we're placing forward. This is a local law, so it does require a public hearing. We expect that to occur in early March. And I just want to just relay one story that I heard from a restaurateur in Saratoga Springs. And how they explained it was, typically, delivery service might be 4 or 5% of their business plan and their annual revenue. Suddenly, as the pandemic hit, conditions changed. That 4 or 5% became 40%, 50%. So it was a stark overnight change in their business plan, in the revenues that they receive each and every year. So that changed the game completely for them. So having this cap, having this in place to help them retain or maintain costs as best they can will go a long way in assisting them to remain viable and be successful. And the other thing that they've all wanted to make sure that I conveyed was they are extremely grateful. They are extremely grateful for their communities that have been supporting them so strongly and have enabled many of them to make it this far. And now, we just heard from Dr. Cools the statistics, the decreasing number of active cases. It's all going in the right direction. So we just need to get them a little further and get back to where they can have normal operating conditions. So they do want to express their deep appreciation for every customer and for all the support that they've received. At this point, I'd like to ask Kevin Dugan, who's the Director of Government Affairs for the New York State Restaurant Association, to come up. Kevin did provide us with some great information along with many of the restaurants in the county, as I mentioned before, and he's going to talk a little bit about why this is so important. Kevin?
Thank you, Supervisor Barrett and Chairman, and the rest of the Board of Supervisors for bringing this important issue to the forefront. Look, it's no surprise that restaurants have really struggled during the course of this pandemic. By our own data, about 1 in 6 restaurants across the state of New York will never open its doors again. Through capacity limits and sort of lack of consumer confidence and safety, we've seen drastic decreases in the amount of customers that are willing to go and eat inside at a restaurant. That has forced restaurants to adapt, and the one way to do that was to rely and lean into more heavily into takeout and delivery. Doing that, you sort of mandates that you work with the popular third-party delivery companies. Unfortunately, some of these companies have taken advantage of restaurants during this difficult time, and it's important that legislation like this comes to the fore, again, to protect these restaurants. Much like the supervisor said, during normal situations and during normal times, we also like the free market to dictate things and dictate the fees and prices that these restaurants partner with these companies have to pay. Unfortunately, as was said, these are not normal times, and it's important that we protect these small businesses. Again, before this legislation, and hopefully when it gets adopted, these fees will be lowered. Currently, some restaurants in Saratoga County are seeing fees as high as 35–40% on a single order. In an industry that survives on small profit margins, mainly between 3% and 5%, that's very, very high, especially when sales are down. So hopefully this legislation will be adopted. This resolution will go forward. Restaurants of Saratoga County will get the protection they need when it comes to having delivery and takeout services, and they'll be able to keep their doors open until the end of the pandemic, because right now that's the number one priority, is simply survival, and this resolution will help them get there. So again, on behalf of the restaurants of Saratoga County, we thank you for pushing this measure forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us on this very important topic. And thank you to Supervisor Barrett for all the work he put in ensuring we got this resolution to a vote next week in a timely fashion. So thank you for all your work. So with that, I'll open up the floor to any questions anyone may have.
Will you be helping people connect, so with this registry, will you be helping people connect with places that can vaccinate them, like pharmacies or the state sites, or only using the list for those who the county is eligible to vaccinate?
So the question was, will Saratoga County be assisting and helping people connect with the sites, if I heard that correctly? And I'm going to ask Supervisor Gaston to respond.
Sure. Thank you. At this time, the purpose of the registry is primarily focused on those that the county can vaccinate. We are always open to cooperating and working with other vaccinators to make sure that people have as much access as possible. But given the number and the different eligibility requirements, that is a little bit difficult. As always, anyone who's interested in what information we do have can go to our website. The vaccination registration page has a list of all pharmacies and other places that we are aware of that can also provide vaccinations.
And I don't know if you want to stay there.
Okay, sure.
With that list, are you hoping that maybe there will be extra allotments that roll in, or prioritization will change, so if it does, then you have that list at the ready to contact different groups of people?
Well, I think it's always our goal. We're happy to accept any vaccinations that come in, any different allotments. The goal is always to be prepared. We want to be ready if the governor's recommendations or prioritization changes. We're going to continue to be ready to that. And that's why we've included all of the eligible categories on the registry as it is now, so that even if someone isn't currently eligible, if we have that information, we may be able to pull from it using that way, and we can adjust as necessary.
Now, do you know anything about some of the lists that either the supervisors have gathered or places like the senior centers? How are those lists being utilized right now?
At those times, those are not official lists being used by public health. We have reached out to the senior centers. They've been advised of this, and they will be working to help input that information. As well, all supervisors will receive a list. We will ask that they input that information or work with their residents to make sure that it's input. We want one centralized list. In addition, this list will be kept confidential. So it's very different than lists. I have a list on my computer of information, not as detailed as what this is, but we want to make sure that that's all combined so that public health has access to all the information they need and the numbers that they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other questions?
With back season right around the corner, track season right around the corner, I know it's preliminary. Has there been any board meetings or talks about, the 10% let in, or what's been going on with that?
So the question was with SPAC and the racing meet coming up in the near future, have there been any conversations on the limits for attendance? I know that the Racing and Wagering Committee has already met. They're dealing with the VLT issue in the state budget and reduction of funding. It's a serious issue for the city of Saratoga Springs as well as Saratoga County, and that is something that I believe they're reviewing as well. Any other questions?
I have another vaccine question.
Sure.
We did hear from someone who has an underlying health condition. She is under the age of 65. So I'm assuming that her prioritization falls within the county, or she's not prioritized for pharmacies. So do you know where she falls, who she should be reaching out to get vaccinated? And will that prioritization change? Will she be able to go to a pharmacy at some point?
So good question, and the question is, I believe in relation to individuals with comorbidities, with the change in the standard for those which will be eligible for vaccine. I'm going to ask Dr. Cools to answer that for you.
So, as you know, the state sets the eligibility criteria in general and also defines which vaccinating entity can vaccinate which groups of people. At present, so an individual, an adult of any age with comorbidities is eligible to be vaccinated by the county.
So in that case, the list would help.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody attending.